I never thought I'd find love again after my divorce. At 46, I wasn't looking for anyone, but then came him. Ethan swept me off my feet with his charm, kindness, and maturity. He was a decade younger than me, but his confidence and emotional depth made me believe age didn't matter. My daughter, Sophia, was supportive, too, or at least I thought she was. Sophia had just turned 25 and was the light of my life. I'd raised her on my own after my divorce, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I considered us close. Ethan seemed to get along with her well, often chatting about books or music. Watching them laugh together warmed my heart. I thought it was a good sign. When Ethan proposed, it felt like a dream come true. The wedding was set for a summer afternoon, surrounded by friends and family. Sophia even offered to help plan the event. "I'm so happy for you, Mom," she said, hugging me tightly. But things didn't stay so perfect. Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle signs. Sophia started pulling away from me, spending less time at home, and acting oddly distant. I chalked it up to her demanding job, but there were moments that felt off. Ethan also began acting differently. He was suddenly more attentive to Sophia, complimenting her new haircut, laughing at her jokes, and casually touching her arm during conversations. I told myself I was imagining things. Why would I ever suspect anything between my fiancé and my daughter? It was unthinkable. Then came the night everything changed. Ethan had stayed late at the house helping Sophia finalize the guest list while I ran errands. When I returned, I found them sitting closer than usual on the couch. Ethan jumped up the moment I entered, his face flushed. Sophia quickly excused herself and went to her room without so much as a good night. "Is something wrong?" I asked Ethan. "Of course not," he replied too quickly. "Sophia's just been stressed lately. She's worried about the wedding going smoothly for you." His explanation was plausible, but his nervous energy lingered in my mind. A week before the wedding, Sophia asked to talk privately. She looked nervous, fiddling with the edge of her sweater as if unsure how to begin. "Mom," she started, her voice trembling. "There's something I need to tell you." I assumed it was wedding jitters or some family drama she was afraid to bring up. "Whatever it is, sweetheart, I'm here for you," I said gently. But the words she said next shattered my entire world. "I'm pregnant." At first, I was stunned but thrilled. "Sophia, that's amazing. Who's the father? Is it serious?" Her face crumpled, and tears streamed down her cheeks. It's Ethan." The room spun around me. I could barely process her words.
"What? No."
"That's impossible," I stammered, shaking my head. But she nodded, her sobs growing louder. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Mom. It started as a mistake, and then I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't mean to hurt you." The betrayal cut deeper than I could describe. My fiancé, my daughter, together? It felt like my entire life had been a lie. I wanted to scream, cry, and demand answers, but all I could manage was stunned silence. Sophia reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "How long?" I managed to whisper. "About 6 months," she admitted, her voice barely audible. 6 months. That meant their affair had started well before Ethan had proposed to me. Every moment I had cherished with him now felt tainted, disgusting. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that my daughter had kept it from me for so long. The shock of Sophia's confession paralyzed me. I wanted to believe it was some cruel, twisted joke, but the look in her eyes confirmed everything. My mind raced, flipping through memories of the past 6 months. Suddenly, all those little moments, the stolen glances, the overly familiar laughter, the quiet tension when I walked into the room, fit together like pieces of a horrible puzzle. I couldn't even cry. My throat felt like it was closing, and the words wouldn't come. My own daughter? My fiancé? How was this my life? I demanded answers, though every question made my stomach churn. "Did he know you were going to tell me?" She shook her head.
"No."
"Ethan doesn't know I'm pregnant." I didn't know how to tell him either, and it's been eating me alive. Her words only deepened the ache in my chest. She wasn't confessing out of guilt. She was trying to offload her burden onto me. I trusted you, Sophia, I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Both of you. And this is how you repay me? Mom, I didn't mean for this to happen, she cried, but the excuse fell flat. Intentions didn't matter. The damage was done. I stormed out of the room before I could say something I might regret. My world was crumbling, and I needed clarity before confronting Ethan. When Ethan came home that night, he looked cheerful, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I couldn't hold back anymore. We need to talk, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. His smile faltered, and he followed me into the living room. What's wrong? I took a deep breath, staring into his eyes, searching for a shred of remorse or guilt. Sophia told me she's pregnant, I began, watching his reaction closely. For a moment, he looked genuinely surprised until I added, "And it's yours?" His face drained of color. The mask of composure he always wore slipped for the first time. I don't know what she told you, but don't lie to me, I shouted, cutting him off. She admitted everything. The affair, the months of betrayal. How could you do this to me? Ethan stammered, his carefully chosen words collapsing under my fury. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to hurt you, I swear. You didn't just hurt me, I snapped. You destroyed everything. Do you even realize what you've done to our family? To Sophia? He buried his face in his hands, mumbling something about being confused, but I didn't care.
Confused?
That was his excuse? You knew what you were doing, Ethan, I said coldly. You had a choice, and you chose to betray me. He fell silent, unable to meet my gaze. His cowardice only fueled my anger. Pack your things, I said, my voice steady, but laced with finality. You're not welcome here anymore.
He didn't argue.
For once, Ethan seemed to understand the gravity of his actions. With Ethan gone, I turned my focus to Sophia. I wanted to believe that she, at least, could be redeemed, that she could explain herself in a way that made sense. But every conversation left me more heartbroken. Did you ever think about what this would do to me? I asked her one evening. She looked down at her hands, tears streaming down her face. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought it would end, and we could go back to normal. Normal, I repeated, laughing bitterly. Do you honestly think we can ever go back to normal after this? Her silence spoke volumes. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Friends and family began noticing something was off. I avoided their calls and skipped work, too ashamed to explain what had happened. How could I tell people that my daughter had an affair with my fiancé? That she was carrying his child? Sophia stayed in her room most days, barely eating or speaking. I wanted to comfort her, but I didn't know how. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was the woman who had stolen my future. One night, I found myself pacing the kitchen, replaying the past few months in my head. I thought about the laughter, the planning, the love I thought we shared. It all felt so hollow now. Finally, I realized what I had to do. This wasn't just about Ethan or Sophia anymore, it was about me. I couldn't keep drowning in their mess. It was time to take control of my life again. In the days following Ethan's departure, I felt like I was walking through the ruins of a life I'd worked so hard to build. Everywhere I turned, I was reminded of what I'd lost. The wedding invitations sitting on the table, Sophia's childhood photos on the mantel, and the empty closet in my bedroom where Ethan's things had been. I wasn't just grieving a broken engagement. I was grieving the life I thought I had. But wallowing wasn't an option. I realized that if I let this betrayal define me, I would be giving Ethan and Sophia more power than they deserved. I needed to reclaim my life. The first step was to address the elephant in the room, Sophia. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and I couldn't bring myself to abandon her entirely. But our relationship would never be the same. One evening, I called her into the living room. She hesitated at first, probably expecting another heated argument, but I spoke calmly. Sophia, we need to talk, I began. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I know I hurt you, Mom. I don't know how to fix it. I don't think you can fix it, I said honestly. But I need to know why. Why him? Why did you betray me like this? She hesitated, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. It wasn't about you, she said finally. It just happened. Ethan made me feel special, like I was the center of his world. And I was lonely. I didn't think it would go this far. Her words cut me to the core. She didn't think it would go this far. As if that somehow excused the betrayal. Sophia, I said, my voice trembling, you didn't just hurt me. You hurt yourself. You're 25 years old, and you've made choices that will follow you for the rest of your life. This isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to comfort her, but I held back. Sometimes, the only way to grow is to face the consequences of your actions head-on. In the weeks that followed, I began rebuilding my life piece by piece. I leaned on my closest friends, finally confiding in them about what had happened. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I also started therapy. At first, it felt strange opening up to a stranger about my deepest pain, but my therapist helped me process the whirlwind of emotions I was experiencing: anger, sadness, betrayal, and even guilt. You can't control what other people do, she told me during one session. But you can control how you respond. You have the power to write the next chapter of your life. Those words stuck with me. One of the hardest decisions I made was to cancel the wedding. I had been avoiding it, hoping the decision would somehow make itself. But eventually, I faced the reality. Sitting down with my phone, I called the venue, the florist, and the caterer, explaining the situation as succinctly as possible. Most people were understanding, but the conversations were painful nonetheless. Each call felt like another nail in the coffin of the life I'd imagined with Ethan. The hardest part was telling extended family and friends who hadn't heard the news. I kept the explanation simple. Ethan and I aren't together anymore. The wedding is off. Some pressed for details, but I refused to elaborate. The last thing I wanted was to air my dirty laundry to the world. As time passed, I started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I signed up for a painting class, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I joined a book club and reconnected with old friends. Slowly, I began to rediscover who I was outside of being a fiancé and a mother. And then there was Sophia. Despite my anger and hurt, I couldn't ignore the fact that she was struggling. Her pregnancy was progressing, and she was terrified of what the future held. Ethan had promised to support her financially, but their relationship was non-existent. One night, as we sat together in awkward silence, she finally opened up. "I don't know how to do this, Mom," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared." Her vulnerability caught me off guard. For the first time in months, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort. "Sophia," I said gently, "you've made mistakes. Huge ones, but you're still my daughter. And I'm still your mom. We'll figure this out together." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Despite my promise to Sophia to stand by her, our relationship remained strained. Trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild overnight. Every interaction felt like walking a tightrope, balancing my love for her as a mother with the deep wound her betrayal had left. Meanwhile, Ethan remained a shadow in our lives. He visited Sophia sporadically, each time bringing gifts for the baby she carried but offering little else. His presence stirred emotions I didn't want to feel: anger, resentment, and, shamefully, lingering heartbreak. One afternoon, Sophia returned home after meeting him. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped under the weight of the choices she'd made. "He said he wants to be there for the baby," she murmured, avoiding my eyes. I raised an eyebrow. "And do you believe him?"
She sighed. "I don't know, Mom.
"He says all the right things, but it feels hollow. Like he's doing it out of guilt, not love." Her words mirrored my own thoughts, though I didn't say so aloud. Instead, I gently reminded her, "You need to focus on what's best for you and the baby, not what Ethan promises." Actions speak louder than words. As Sophia's pregnancy progressed, I found myself reluctantly drawn into her preparations. At first, I kept my involvement minimal, picking up a crib from the store, helping her sort through baby clothes. But as time passed, I realized that helping her wasn't just about supporting her, it was about finding healing for myself. One evening, as we painted the nursery together, I noticed a change in Sophia. She laughed more easily, her excitement about becoming a mother shining through despite the circumstances. "Do you think I can do this?" she asked, glancing at me nervously. I paused, setting down the paintbrush. "You've made mistakes, Sophia. Big ones. But being a mother isn't about being perfect. It's about love, patience, and learning as you go. And I think you'll be a good mom if you let yourself be." Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time in months, she hugged me tightly. While Sophia prepared for motherhood, I continued rebuilding my own life. My therapist encouraged me to explore what made me happy, and slowly, I began to rediscover passions I had long buried under the weight of responsibility. One day, I stumbled upon an ad for a local hiking group. I hadn't been hiking in years, but something about the idea called to me. Nervously, I signed up for a weekend outing. The experience was transformative. As I climbed steep trails and marveled at breathtaking views, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. The fresh air and physical exertion helped clear my mind, and for the first time, I felt truly present in the moment. It became a ritual. Every Saturday, I joined the group, forming new friendships and reconnecting with the adventurous side of myself I'd forgotten. Ethan's involvement with Sophia continued to be sporadic at best. One evening, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her frustration evident. "He canceled again," she said bitterly. "He said something about work being too busy." I sighed, choosing my words carefully. "Sophia, you can't rely on him to be someone he's not. You need to focus on building a stable life for your baby, with or without him." She nodded, though I could see the disappointment in her eyes. A few weeks later, Sophia made a decision that surprised me. She announced that she wanted to move out and find a place of her own. "I need to prove to myself that I can do this, Mom," she explained. "I don't want to keep leaning on you for everything." While part of me worried about her ability to manage on her own, I admired her determination. Together, we found a small apartment nearby, and I helped her set it up. Watching her take this step toward independence was bittersweet. I was proud of her growth, but I couldn't help but feel the sting of her absence. As the due date approached, I found myself unexpectedly excited about the arrival of my grandchild. Despite the pain and betrayal, the thought of holding a new life in my arms filled me with hope. When the day finally came, Sophia called me in a panic. "Mom, it's happening." I rushed to the hospital, arriving just in time to see her wheeled into the delivery room. Hours later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. She was perfect, tiny, fragile, and full of promise. Sophia looked exhausted but radiant as she cradled her daughter. "Mom, I couldn't have done this without you," she said softly. Tears filled my eyes as I kissed her forehead. "You're stronger than you think, Sophia. And this little one is lucky to have you as her mom." Holding my granddaughter for the first time, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. The weight of the betrayal, the bitterness, the sorrow, they all melted away in that moment. She was pure, untouched by the mistakes of the past, a fresh start for both Sophia and me. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, and I whispered a silent promise. I would protect her, guide her, and love her unconditionally. Sophia thrived in her new role as a mother. Watching her care for her daughter filled me with a pride I hadn't expected. She had grown stronger, more independent, and more compassionate. One evening, she came over for dinner, the baby asleep in her arms. As we sat together on the couch, she hesitated before speaking. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she began. "I've been seeing a therapist. I needed to understand why I made the choices I did, why I let myself get so lost." Her honesty took me by surprise, but it also filled me with hope. "And what have you learned?" I asked gently. "That I was scared," she admitted. "Of disappointing you, of not being enough. I thought Ethan was my escape, but he was just a symptom of how lost I felt. I let him hurt both of us, and I'll never forgive myself for that." I reached out, taking her hand. Sophia, we've both made mistakes. But what matters is that you're taking responsibility and moving forward. I'm proud of you. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, Mom. You don't have to, I replied. Just keep being the best mom you can be. That's enough for me. As for Ethan, he faded into the background of our lives. His promises to be there for the baby dwindled until they stopped altogether. At first, Sophia was devastated, but over time, she came to see it as a blessing. We're better off without him, she said one day, watching her daughter toddle across the living room. She doesn't need someone who's half in and half out of her life. She has us. And she was right. Together, we built a new life, one filled with love, laughter, and second chances. Months turned into years, and our little family flourished. Sophia continued to grow, balancing her responsibilities as a mother with her dreams of becoming a teacher. I rediscovered my passion for life, diving into new hobbies and meeting people who enriched my world. One day, as I watched my granddaughter blow out the candles on her third birthday cake, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Life hadn't turned out the way I'd imagined. It had been messy, painful, and full of unexpected twists. But it had also given me a strength I didn't know I had, and a love I hadn't thought possible. As the party wound down, Sophia sat beside me, her daughter curled up in her lap. Mom, she said softly, do you ever wish things had been different? I thought for a moment before shaking my head.
No.
Because every choice, every mistake, every heartbreak, it brought us here. And here is exactly where we're meant to be. Sophia smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Sophia, I replied, holding her close. In that moment, surrounded by my family, I knew we were going to be okay. Not because life was perfect, but because we had each other. And that was enough.